All right, so we already started. Hello, Dr. David Hernandez and also Dr. Monaliza Chian. My name is Anissa from Indonesia, and let me introduce both of you as our speakers here to the audience first. So, Dr. David Hernandez-Saca is an associate professor in the Department of Special Education at the University of Northern Iowa. He investigates the emotional impact of learning disability labeling on inner speech and the dialogical self, the role of emotionally in teacher learning about social justice, and examines violence within the academy against disabled faculty of color for their well-being. And also we have here Dr. Monaliza Maximo Chian, PhD, is uh, an assistant professor of instruction and a program coordinator for online teacher education at the University of Northern Iowa. Dr. Chian also has over 20 years in California before her postdoctoral work at the University of Hong Kong. And Dr. Chian's research agenda includes curriculum, program design and evaluation, literacy, and teacher education and research methodologies. We're so grateful for having both of you here. And for starting this session, I will pass the time to Dr. Hernandez and Dr. Monaliza. The stage is yours.
Well, thank you for that introduction. We really appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. We are excited to be here with you today. My name is, as Ani Sa mentioned, David Hernandez-Saca, and I'm an associate professor of disability studies in education within the Department of Special and Inclusive Education at the University of Northern Iowa. The title of our presentation is Exploring the Potential of Transformative Pedagogies and Interdisciplinarity for Pre-Service and In-Service Teachers.
And warmest greeting. Good morning, good afternoon, or evening. For our case, it is very early morning from Iowa, United States. As Ms. Anissa had mentioned, my name is Dr. Monaliza Maximo Chian in the Curriculum and Instruction at the University of Northern Iowa. I also would like to introduce our leader, Dr. Robin Dada, who is with us today. And we want to acknowledge her presence and her contribution to the study and this presentation. She was the one who encouraged us to submit and join this international community. And we're curious if you would like to share with us in the chat box where you are Zooming or joining us today. Hi, Kimberly's from South Africa. Wonderful. Hi, Vanessa. Hi, Joseph. Hi, Vian. All right, shall we go ahead and continue? Hello, everyone.
Hey, Robin.
All right, we can move on to the next slide. Do we have the next slide?
Yeah, I think for some reason, we can't see it, but we can assume we're at the next slide now.
Are we on the next slide?
No.
There's no presentation. Vanessa, I'm so sorry. There we are. Fantastic. Okay. So we can move on to the next slide. And that is our agenda. So in consideration in consideration with the learning session, as described as carefully curated learning experiences to contribute to the personal, professional, and programmatic growth and development of our participants, we prepared the following agenda for us to share and hope to stoke reflections and connections to your own praxis and context. So we will begin with our introduction, describe our institutional context to situate our work. Then we will take most part of our time sharing our practical, methodological, theoretical, and conceptual frameworks and pedagogies that are guiding a transformative and inclusive programs and pathways. We will end with an invitation to connect for future conversation. Right. And on to the next slide, please.
By the end of our time together, we hope that you will understand the co-presenters' personal, professional, and programmatic contexts in teacher education, understand the practical, methodological, theoretical, and conceptual frameworks and pedagogies that we use, and gain examples of technology-enabled transformative pedagogies. We can go to the next slide now.
Yes, thank you. So we're now moving on to present our positionalities. So in preparing for positionalities, we had envisioned that we will be engaging with international scholars with rich backgrounds. So we carefully curated some visuals to acknowledge the connected fabric that hold the tapestry of our beings. So we present this quote from Acevedo and colleagues about our positions and positionalities. It says, when we think about our position in the world, and more specifically about our position in society, we reflect upon the different roles that occupy us in our lives. In other words, when we inquire into the different ways in which we participate in various communities, in our family, in our neighborhood, in our work, in our school, classroom, in our informal gatherings, and in our formal gatherings alike, we come to the realization that we are, in fact, multifaceted individuals. We adopt different stances as we navigate different communities of interactions. So, as we share our positionalities today, we would like to invite you to think about your positionalities as well as we are engaging in the learning sessions today. We can move on to the next slide, please.
I immigrated to the United States with my family from El Salvador in 1985 when I was 2 years old. I am half Palestinian and half El Salvadorian. That is my passport photo on the upper left. My parental grandparents are on the bottom left, and my maternal grandparents are on the bottom right center. I am the youngest of 6. This photo is of my family in the next to my passport photo. Is when we lived in Los Angeles, California. The flags represent my mixed heritage background and my US citizenship. That is a photo of my neighbor, Josefina, there when I was very young, who used to take care of me when my mom was at work. My mom has cut hair for 45 years, and this is the way she took care of us financially. Next to the El Salvadorian flag is a picture of when I first voted for President Obama as a US citizen. In the middle is my partner. Leon is Navajo from the southwest of the United States. We have been together for 13 years. The fist with the equal sign and the colors represents my gay pride and identity. When I was migrating to the United States with my family, I got a high fever of 105 that almost killed me, but it gave me convulsions and seizures growing up till about the first grade. This resulted in being placed in special education during my schooling. I would be labeled with an auditory learning disability in school as well. It was not until I learned of this label that I became more cognizant of my disability consciousness and identity. The flag between my grandmother and mother and I is the disability pride flag. This represents my personal positionality that led to my eventual role as a critical, special, inclusive, and disability studies in education teacher educator at UNI. We can go to the next slide now.
Thank you, Dr. David. So this actually slide, and I think the slide that Dr. David had shared is that we also share these with our students in our online courses as a visual introduction. So a little bit about me. My family is my world. I'm a wife of almost 30 years and a mom of two children, and which in itself a transformative journey. My husband is biracial, Peruvian Chinese, biethnic, Hispanic Asian, multicultural, Asian Hispanic American, bilingual, fluent in both Spanish and English. My children here, Aaron, now 18 years old, and Andrew is 13 years old, consider themselves as third cultural children. They were born and lived in their formative years in Southern California, um, lived in Hong Kong for 5 years, and Aaron is now studying at King's College in London, and Andrew is now with us in Iowa, the Midwest part of the U.S., and learning a new culture. Um, I I consider myself part as a global citizen, partly because I was born and raised in the Philippines and moved to Los Angeles when I was 15, and then immigrated to Hong Kong in 2018 and back to the US in 2023. Um, I joined the community, the global community, to contribute to the betterment of our society. Um, Knowing the interdependence and connectedness of humanity, keeping abreast of the global issues, and be mindful of my actions. My father was a teacher in the Philippines, so I pretty much lived in school since I was able to walk. I spent most of my early years there until I was in kindergarten. And as a working mom, I have a constant challenge to uh, to balance my time with work and family life. And when it get too much, I escape to the golf course where I am just focusing on enjoying the nature and the beauty of nature, as well as trying to hit the golf balls. And I'm also committed to learning something new, which positions me in a posture of a beginner, of empathy, and of humility. And this year, I'm learning how to paint, and these two are my first and my second painting. You can move on to the next slide. And since Dr. Robin Dada is not able to join our presentation today, so I'm going to go ahead and read what she has written about her positionality. And she has written, um, "My children on the left saw me through my developing stages from new parent to children and on through the parent of adult children age. There is always more to learn. My immigrant parents left a lasting legacy in our entire family. Grandchildren give the opportunity to use prior knowledge in child development to get things more right the second time through. My husband and I enjoy our lives in Iowa following about 20 years in the Middle East. Travel gives opportunities to realize there are multiple perspectives and know that one is limited in understanding when only one perspective is available. Thank you, Dr. Dada. So we can move on to the next slide, please. So to give you a little bit of our institutional context, the University of Northern Iowa is located in the state of Iowa. It's in the upper Midwestern region of the United States. As you can see on here, it borders the rivers, the Missouri River to the east, the Missouri River and Big Sioux River to the west, and Wisconsin to the northeast, Illinois to the east and southeast, and Missouri to the south. Nebraska to the west, and South Dakota to the northeast, and Minnesota to the north. And Iowa is the 26th largest in total area and the 30th most populous of the 50 states. We can move on to the next slide. In our institutional context, a little bit about our university. The University of Iowa is a public university in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Um, we offer more than 60 majors across 5 colleges, and it was established in 1876 as a state normal school, which a purpose of training school teachers and education. And we just want to highlight a little bit of our school here. Why UNI is not too big, not too small, it's just right. It is best in the Midwest by top public school regional university category, according to U.S. News and World Report. It's we provide affordable education, and we pride ourselves with a 16-to-1 student to faculty ratio with 98% graduate success. And we can move on to our College of Education on the next slide. The College of Education houses 5 departments, which are curriculum instruction, educational psychology, foundations and leadership studies, health, recreation and community services, special inclusive education and teaching. We also have 4 centers and spaces for collaborations on the right-hand side on the slide, and 3 offices that support all 5 departments and the centers. We can go ahead and move on to the next slide, please.
Now we will discuss our praxical, and I wanted to define praxical. Dr. Monaliza and I wanted to define praxical. It's both theory and practice and theory, methodological, theoretical, and conceptual frameworks, and pedagogies that inform our collective work at the University of Northern Iowa. We can go to the next slide now. Our research design is a self-study in teacher education that included 5 tools of self-study. Critical friendships, just like Dr. Monaliza and Dr. Robin and I were critical friends and colleagues. We focus on our personal, professional, and programmatic selves. There are 10 principles of self-study, which include a sense of curiosity rooted in practice, self-awareness and focused on practice, examination of the self in context, a positive commitment to change, ongoing professional growth, benefit from community support and shared accountability, experience-based knowledge serves as the epistemic or the epistemology is the way of knowing, coming to know what we know and how we know. And that is the foundation for self-study scholarship. Theory guides self-study scholars who in turn influence theory development. Scholars make their self-focused learning public, and it requires bravery and resiliency. Regarding our data sources, we had the following: place-based and virtual meetings, text messages and emails. We utilized Google Documents and folders. We consulted the literature, relevant literature. Our ongoing methods of data collection include open and descriptive coding and thematic analysis. We can go to the next slide now. Overall, our work has been informed by Meziro's 10 phases of transformative learning theory, which include a situation where there's a disorienting dilemma, which triggers a self-examination, a critical assessment, recognition, exploration, planning, which leads to knowledge, skill, and acquisition, provisional trying of new roles, given a challenge of that disorienting dilemma. And then there is a building of competence and confidence and a reintegration given continuous feedback that's meaningful and timely and continuous. We can go to the next slide now. Transformative pedagogy is likened to the difference between allowing flowers to bloom versus filling a bucket. Characteristics that include a transformative pedagogy are learner-centered, active learning, combines critical thinking, self-awareness, ethics, and advocacy. Learners are aware, critical, responsive to their world, learning beyond the walls of the school. That includes families, peers, communities, religious institutions, and informal learning environments. We can go to the next slide now, please. In addition, transformative pedagogy includes context responsiveness, context sensitive, safe learning environments, participation, collaboration for inclusion, democratic citizenship, freedom of expression, respect for difference, and nonviolent transformation of conflict, role modeling, and focused on whole school approach. We can go to the next slide now. Within the context of a critical systematic literature review, about interdisciplinariness, collaboration, and intersectional equity in teacher education that Dr. Monaliza and Dr. Robin and I have been conducting for about 11 months now. We have conceptualized the importance of the future of teacher education to include these three factors. By accounting for the salience, the importance of culture, socioeconomics, and politics, ethnicity, as it relates to teacher education as reflexive praxis pedagogy that accounts for the what, how, why, whom, when, and where in the knowledge construction or co-construction relative to the curriculum, the assessment, and pedagogy within and across subject matters and departmental disciplines. We can go to the next slide now. We further conceptualize interdisciplinarity through collaboration and dialogue that centers on the virtue of trust, teams, and togetherness. We can go to the next slide now.
Thank you. And the transformative pathways that we are going to be featuring for you today are grounded with principles, conceptual frameworks, and pedagogies centered on our students' needs, life situations, and future aspirations. We would like to share with you a brief history and context of these transformative pathways and programs. So, our university struggled, as most institutions of higher education, with declining enrollment caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. It was clear as an institution we needed to reach out to new populations that we had not previously done before. We began to consider equity of access to programs and asked ourselves, could our programs be delivered using online and distance learning modes? Would adults be interested in finishing degrees started in the past? And would they be able to work and study? So the entire campus engaged in conversations around wraparound services, which is presented in the slide, um, to support the whole students who might be working by day, raising family, responding to the needs of aging parents, and trying to pick up and finish that degree they started long ago. So the wraparound principles consisted of the following components. Starting from the top, we have family voice and choice, team-based, natural supports, collaboration, culturally competent, individualized, strength based, unconditional care, outcome based, and community based. And we can move on to the next slide, please. In addition, our framework, which also guided our program, curricular designs and pedagogies, are grounded in critical and special inclusive education and disability studies in education, which are indicated in the center of this flower. The petals are principles that bind our praxis and pedagogies, which are culturally responsive and sustaining pedagogies, radical love, storing principles, universal design for learning. And we will be explaining each of these principles and we'll provide some examples on how they were put into action. We further adopt and apply the principles of universal design for learning. If you can go ahead and change the slide. Let's move on to the next slide, please. All right. So, as mentioned, we are intentionally applying the principles of universal design for learning, as indicated in the slide. I'll pause a moment to give you some time to read the three principles of UDL and its characteristics. As you can see, the recurring theme of the principles here is of multiplicity and diversity of engagements, representation, and that is representation of knowledge, as well as making sure that each student has representation. I think we lost the. Are we back? Okay, so we are going to wait for a second for the slide to come up again. Okay, perhaps I can try to share the screen. Okay, let me move this up. Okay. Um, okay. I'm wondering, can you see it all?
We can.
Okay. View tab, Airman, sharing the screen. Okay. And if it's okay, I'm going to have to see if I can view the slideshow. And we can go ahead and continue with the slide that we have. All right. Our apologies for our technical difficulties. And we believe we are universal design for learning. As we were talking about the recurring themes, universal design for learning is a multiplicity and diversity is mentioned here in our engagement, representation, action, and expression. And we will be giving you examples on how these principles are put into practice in our within our programs. We also drawn from Highlander Institute organization in their representation of the culturally responsive and sustaining pedagogies. As you can see in the visual, they have four domains, which are critical consciousness, awareness, cognitive development, and community building.
Our transformative work is also informed by principles of storying. Storying nurtures thought, body, and soul. Storying claims voice in the silence margins. Storying is embodied relational meaning making. Storying intersects the past and present as living archives, and storying enacts collective ownership and authorship. We can go to the next slide now. Our transformative education work is also informed by radical love. Psychologist Eric Fromm believed that mature love is characterized by four core elements: care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. Fromm believed that these elements are mutually interdependent and that love is an active power that involves giving. He also believed that love should be practiced with humility, courage, and persistence, and that it should be directed towards other people. We can go to the next slide now. We now move on to sharing our featured transformative education programs. We can go to the next slide.
Yes, thank you. And the first program was developed nearly 25 years ago, was the 2+2 program. This program connected an Associates of Arts degree to the Bachelor of Arts degree in elementary education at UNI. Over the years, this program grew from 10 students per cohort to 140 students per cohort, as technology made it possible for students at a greater distance from the university to study from their home. The classes are currently offered synchronously and asynchronously for students working the course accessible to people unable to come to campus or unable to leave work to return to study. So we provide with you some examples of culturally responsive and sustaining pedagogy under this program. These are the assignments that were curated, and some of them I employ in my elementary curriculum and the methods of of teaching early literacy courses. And while all these assignments have I fall under the domains of culturally responsive and sustaining pedagogy. I put in here the targeted domain. So we have cultivating a heart of reflective practice. And some examples of activities here is creating curricula, building from their students' funds of knowledge. We're connecting personal, professional, research based experiences and theories. So we ask the students to reflect and examine past and current experiences as students and as teachers in training, and have them identify some teaching practices that they would adopt or adapt and discard in their future classroom based on their current learning. We're continually developing a culture of sharing, engaging them in whole and small group community meetings, sharing of classroom experiences, revelations from readings, interaction with others. And we foster a commitment for self care and love for lifelong learning, and that we foster the creating, monitoring, adjusting smart goals, both professional and personal, and recognizing and celebrating all wins, whether it be small or grand.
The Purple Pathway is an apprenticeship model program for para-educators to be licensed as elementary and special education teachers. Para-educators have already decided that they want to work with children and they are committed to their community. Students enrolled in this program either have a 2-year degree or a bachelor's degree outside of education. Students complete their coursework that is tailored in order to provide the necessary professional knowledge and skill sets to achieve their licensure. These apprentices typically return to their school as a teacher following their graduation. One of our colleagues shared this universal design for learning approach to student journal entries in the context of our Purple Pathway interdisciplinary collaboration, in which we would give students 2 options to process and express what they learned from the readings in their course. Option 1 is called the TQC, where students would provide a thought or a feeling they had completing the reading, a question or a quote, a question they had and would like to discuss or consider, or a quote that was meaningful to them, a connection that they made regarding the reading and their experiences in K through 12 schools. Go to the next slide now. The option 2 was a visual representation that is called a one-pager, that had a minimum of 3 images that connected to the reading, 3 to 5 carefully chosen words that highlighted the main ideas, and 2 quotes from the reading. The purpose of the UDL journal entries was to also underscore in the design of the assessment to maximize student choice and autonomy through multiple means of action and expression and engagement. We can go to the next slide now.
Thank you. And the third program that we would like to feature is our Transformative Education, MAE. It's a graduate certificate in transformative education, and adding area of specialization will then equal to a master's degree. So the idea to collaborate across departments developed an interdisciplinary master's came when we were experiencing declining enrollment, reduced support by the legislative body towards higher education, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Traditional master's program were not filling in to hold a viable um, course or cohort. Um, So it became clear that graduate education must reinvent itself at UNI. So the Department of Education, Special Education and Curriculum and Instruction studied options for a year before settling on the idea of a focus on transformative education based master's pathway that could allow a master's student to focus on disrupting our pre COVID past, recognizing the need for a greater focus on inclusivity, interdisciplinarity, the confrontation of wicked problems, and the changing attitudes of students and families toward higher education, and the interconnectedness of Iowa to the rest of the globe. We would like to introduce our additional members of our team. So we have Dr. Lori Norton Meyer, the director of the Jacobson Center for Comprehensive Literacy and a professor of literacy education. We have introduced our leader, Robin Dada, and we have Dr. Sana Chung, an assistant professor for literacy education, and this is Lavia Stocheva, um, associate adjunct professor in the educational psychology and leadership studies. And as we work together, we build on each other's strengths and experiences and draw upon each other's disciplinary expertise. So, this is our pitch in our program. As you can see, our vision, mission, and goals are encapsulated in our pitch. We offer the invitation to be part of a systems change through a journey of co-learning and co-working, sharing of experiences that engender visionary educators and leaders. It also is an invitation to be active contributors for innovative pedagogy, cutting edge research, and interactional engagement to disrupt and revolutionize education for positive societal change.
Our transformative MA focus and courses included and are organized in the following way: theory to practice, research proficiency and critical analysis, leadership development, ethical decision making, policy analysis, and advocacy. And the courses included exploring transformative education, engaging in transformative education, critiquing transformative education, and creating transformative education. We can go to the next slide now. Continuing with our implementation of UDL 3.0, as part of our way of operationalizing transformative education in our transformative MA program, as part of the MAE students' end of the program assignment, we are asking them to create a children's picture book to tell their transformative self story. Throughout the semester, we will also have students have checkpoints regarding their progress on this end of the semester assignment. Since the idea is that for each of the semester's courses and modules, we will have students think and apply what they learned to their children's picture book. Go to the next slide now.
So, under the umbrella of our developing conceptual framework for transformative education, our cultural dimensions is included here that we view as fluid and dynamic through our interactions and engagement with various actors. That includes people, policies, texts, and discoveries in multiple lived realities and worlds. We specifically drew upon the value systems of the cultural dimension, which includes the beliefs, affects, and experiences from the cultural dimension as we think. talk together and make meaning on how we can create a program that move from traditional to transformative education. So we intentionally adopt the guiding principles or frameworks that we consider as the foundations of our design thinking and feeling and reasoning. And those includes interdisciplinarity, intersectionality, reflective practice, and inclusive education. Together as a team, we view our teaching and research are inseparable, and such thinking and actions are in tandem. So while we're developing and thinking and making meaning through creating these courses, we also engage in collective self-study. Um, and those through these processes of developing a transformative MAE program, um, in creating and researching the development of recurring themes and courses, we consider our result of these processes as our theory of change in our application of our transformative learning theory to make both our course design thinking and research processes public, as we are doing today. So, in closing, we want to thank you for your presence and your attention and your patience for the technical difficulties. And secondly, we want to extend our invitation for future conversations. We have prepared these questions for us to ponder together a- and to continue our conversations into the future.
How do you define transformative education in your personal, professional, and programmatic selves and contexts, and why? What are some frameworks, methodologies, and or pedagogies that you currently use to support global citizenship and social emotional learning in your inclusive praxis, and why? How could you use any of the frameworks, methodologies, and or pedagogies that were presented today from Dr. Monaliza and Dr. Robin and I to support culturally sustaining universal design for learning in your inclusive praxis, and why?
And we have also curated some resources and references for you in the next two slides. And in this slide, we have our contact information, and the QR codes for our slides and our one-page summary for you to review and to follow up on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Monaliza.
Thank you, Dr. David.
Please welcome.
Okay, there's a question. How do you encourage educators to balance personal reflection and critical consciousness with practical applications in the classroom, especially when working with diverse students' background? Dr. David?
Well, that's a wonderful question, and I think you might have heard of being culturally responsive starts with the self, and I think it's also a lifelong journey. And I think a lot of the frameworks, virtues that we talked about today, that are really shape our personal self and our professional self and our programmatic self, leaning into who you are, but staying open in relationship with your students, and that personal reflection. Personal reflection can look differently for each of us. It could be having a journal. It could be a practice that, you shift your mindset as you're walking into the classroom. And so I think it's really important to think about what these concepts mean to you and how those already operate in your life, but also this notion of intersectionality is really important that we talked about, to think about, well, who counts as diverse learners? And so all of that conceptual knowledge can, we don't tell that to students, but it shapes what we do, how we move, what we say, all those W's that we talked about. I think there's a yin and yang between the theory and the practice. And that's why I think for us, we label that praxis. So I think starting with the self and how you conceptualize your profession, your trade is really important, and being open. That's how I would begin to answer that question.
Thank you so much, Dr. David. And I think we have about 2 more minutes. Thank you so much for your kind words, and we look forward to future conversations.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, yes.
All right. So, first of all, I want to say sorry for the inconvenience situation about the technical issue. And thank you so much for your cooperation. That is so much thankful. Okay, so thank you so much to Dr. David Hernandez and also Dr. Monaliza Chian for your amazing presentation to share about exploring the potential of transformative pedagogies and interdisciplinarity for per-service and in-service teachers in various learning. And I hope that every participant here has gotten so much insight from what our speaker just presented about. Thank you so much to the attendees here for your interactive participation, for your question on chat, and your time also to attending this session. And again, thank you so much to Dr. David and Dr. Monaliza for being here. See you in another session.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Go team.
So, how do we exit?
I think, okay.